There's 0% corporate tax if you reinvest the profit in the business itself. Latvia was also aiming to be like a little Switzerland. It's not going anywhere with CASPs in Estonia. You need funding to operate under MiCA license, quick and easy, but it's a serious process in itself. They have to be very clear on what their services are. They verified the money laundering officer, board members, and so on. Your operations would have to be seized probably at some moment if you have problems. DORA is basically backbone of IT security. AI doesn't have normal sense liability or sense of liability. The AI cannot draft a legal memo or write a document to court. The pre-licensing stage is not something written in the law. It's a little bit more vague. The Bank of Latvia, they have these questions. You provide an answer, clear or not clear. They ask additional questions until everything is basically green. If you are just approaching the Bank of Latvia, it's completely okay if you just explain the business model, the services you will provide. That would be enough and sufficient for you to start communicating with the Bank of Latvia. It's not necessary that your target audience is in the same country. You have to go in substance. You need capital to actually implement all of the things.
Hey, before we dive in this episode, I have a good news to share. I'm excited to share that I have partnered with Baltic Fintech Days 2026, which is happening in May 12th and 14th in Riga. Baltic Fintech Days, this is the place where the people building and scaling fintechs across Europe comes together. At 12th of May, there will be side events, meetups, and networking. At 13th of May, there will be the main conference at Hansa's Parents, packed with sharp insights and real conversations about what's actually working in fintech today. There will be the talks about the AI in finance, payment and infrastructure, scalable fintech models, regulation and market expansion, and many more. And here's the best part for you. If you are planning to go to this event, Baltic Fintech Days 2026, but you don't have tickets yet, our sponsor is giving away 2 tickets for the people who will be watching this video. All you need to do to participate is just basically subscribe, like, share, and comment Baltic Fintech Days 2026. And you can do this below this video. Also, for other people who will not be able to win the tickets, you still can register to that event. Basically, just going to www.balticfintechdays.com, and there you will find the registry form where you can actually register to that event. Hey, this is Darius, and welcome back to Founders Unchained, the show where we sit down with builders, innovators, and experts in the field. And today we have a special guest who is a manager of PWC Legal in Latvia, Kristers Losans. I really appreciate that you joined our episode. Today we're going to discuss really important topic which relates to MiCA regulation and CASP licensing. And I think this is really important topic, at least nowadays, and many companies who do business in crypto space, we actually have many questions. So I hope with Kristers today, we're going to answer many of them. And for the people who don't know you, can you just elaborate a little bit more about yourself, about your background, what you do, and specifically how you can help startups?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Kristers Losans. I'm manager attorney in PWC Legal Latvia, as you said. Been practicing law for approximately 10 years now. 10 years ago, started with M&A and corporate matters. Have worked with that my whole life. And with time, I started doing other things. As an attorney, I've gone also to courts related, to economic matters, disputes with economic nature, also criminal cases concerning money laundering, sanctions. But lately as well, I've started working in fintech field with banking and finance questions, with regulatory questions, and so on. So I'm also actively working with CASP licensing processes here in Latvia. So that would be shortly about myself.
The reason why I actually invited you to the show, because I heard that, Latvia, this is really great jurisdiction to consider if you want to get the CASP licensing. So just would like to get your opinion, or let's say your understanding about other jurisdictions around, like Lithuania, Estonia, and others, how you actually look different comparing with those jurisdictions.
Well, I will start with Estonia this time. With Estonia, it seems that I've heard from Estonians themselves that it seems that it's not going anywhere with CASPs in Estonia. If I'm correct, on today's date, they haven't issued a single license. And it's really difficult if anyone wants to get a license there. It does seem like impossible. But if I compare Latvia to other countries within Europe, including Lithuania, then I think there are several reasons why, like maybe CASP license in Latvia is attractive. One of the main reasons is that there's a pre-licensing stage in Latvia, which is free. You approach the Bank of Latvia as regulator, and you submit a few documents, and they already provide you comments and start working with you, so you can get assurance that your business model and the services you will provide will be acceptable and understandable to the regulator. And they are quite efficient in their communication with you as a person, as a business that wants to receive a license. And I've heard that in many countries it's not the case. That also from our clients that they had approached the other countries within Europe and they hadn't received like a substantial or a normal answer within months. So the efficiency maybe is the pro, and also the costs that have to be paid to the regulator are rather low. It's, if I remember it correctly, again, it's 0.6% from gross profit, which has to be paid as fee to the regulator. So I would say those things, and the other ones, the general things about tax regime, how approachable are other institutions. Basically, efficiency of the licensing and costs are the main things driving interest in Latvia.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Speaking about the Latvia itself, you said that in Estonia we have 0 licenses issued. I know that in Lithuania, I think we have more or less like 4 or 5 licenses issued. How Latvia looks like in this sense?
In Latvia, we issued 2 licenses at the end of the last year. As far as I know, there are 5 or 6 companies, according to like publications, that are in the licensing stage, and they should soon receive a license. And then there are approximately, it seems like 12 companies in pre-licensing stage. It's difficult to tell why there are not more licenses at this stage, but it's really difficult to tell. It depends on how quickly certain companies approach the regulator, how the licensing process has gone on. So it's maybe we cannot maybe yet draw a conclusion on how efficient is regulator here in Latvia. Maybe the companies approached the regulator only late last year, so we don't know fully. But there are only 2 licenses now, but it seems that there will be several ones additionally this year.
Okay. Would you agree that, it's down to the companies also how well we are prepared basically to submit a documentation? I've seen a couple of examples and I've seen that some of the guys, we had really good qualitative documents in place. Some other, people who was submitted documents, it wasn't good quality. So I think it's down to this part specifically. If you are willing to get CASP licensing, you need to have really good team in place who can explain you what kind of documents it's needed, what you should do, how you need to structure them based on MiCA requirements. And I think this is one of the problems why some of the guys we can be rejected. Also, would you agree that the financial requirement is something which stops companies also to apply?
I would say that financial constraints are there in some sense. It's you need funding. You need funding to operate under MiCA license to get things started. Not only the initial share capital you have to safeguard, but also there are costs logically for before you even start operations, you need to pay both advisors and already some employees that work on the licensing process. And even once you get the license, there's some time necessary for you to really start operating if you haven't done it before. So I would say that some capital is really necessary, and people sometimes think it's quick and easy, but it's a serious process in itself because now it's regulated and there are requirements, there are big pillars like AML and DORA, and you cannot treat it lightly by saying, okay, we have one quick document on 7 pages and that's it. With that document, you don't have anything in place really to showcase how you're going to operate. These documents are not only meant for the regulator, but these documents are meant for the moment once you start operating, once the cash flow starts flowing through you, through the company, you have to know what happens and why, and to cover all the risks. So here everything costs. Of course, it's possible to do the process very cost efficiently. That's possible. But I think if somebody has in mind that, I'm gonna pay minimum share capital and that's it, I cannot say that's the reality as well.
Okay. As this episode will be watched by people who are startups or starting to build something, or maybe we are considering also as an existing business to get the license to be able to operate in the market. So, we definitely touched, the very important point, financial requirements. So it's also important to understand what is the amount, what we are speaking here about. And another part, you was mentioning the documents. So could you just specify what kind of financial requirement is, what kind of documents actually we need to submit, and what else, what you can share.
Yeah. Okay, so I think beyond the financial requirements, the most important thing that I would suggest to anyone coming to, let's say, Latvia, licensing under MiCA, is that they have to firstly they have to have a clear plan in mind. They have to be very clear on what their services are if you want to be efficient with the process, because sometimes you create a product but at the end of the day you don't know what under which services this falls according to MiCA. A second thing is I would say that you would already, if you want to make the process more efficient, you need a good team, because the regulators also look who is in the team. They verified the money laundering officer, board members, and so on. You need real competency there. Maybe I was extending my answer to your question, but I would say these are already very important steps. And to answer more concretely your question, I think from documents side, beyond financial matters, the big pillars are important. Like AML and sanctions for Latvia. I think within Europe, it's already everyone is on the same page how important that is. But Latvia is one of the in the forefront as the country with the, I would say, maybe the strictest rules, but previously, but we have a high standard in a good way. I would say this is a pro for Latvia because we underwent a real reconstruction of the country in AML and sanctions perspective. And so the bar is high. So this is one pillar where you have to be ready, working together with consultants, with your own employees to craft really tight procedure risk assessment so that you don't have any problems in the future. And the other big pillar I would say is the DORA, because these pillars are like the backbone of your security of yourself and the clients, because you don't want to be in a situation where you start operating, something fails, and then in that scenario, it's like a big red flag, because in that case, if something fails, it's not only your clients, but you, as I said, and then your operations would have to be seized probably at some moment if you have problems in that sense. So yeah.
Okay, and you can just tell us, what is DORA, in simple words.
When I'm talking with clients, I usually, when they ask more to me about DORA, I refer these questions to, we have colleagues who are specializing in all IT matters, technological matters. I, as a lawyer, work with MiCA, like legal side, and then with financial matters. So, but in my very simplistic words, DORA is basically backbone of IT security requirements to have in place that does nothing falls from that side for you as a company. That would be my simplistic way to put it, basically.
Okay. And if we will come back to the structure itself. So first of all, as I understand, you need to have local company established in Latvia, for example. Another point what you was mentioning were some specific requirement for having some specific roles. So AML expert and so on. So can you just really quickly tell us, what are the main positions, what you must have, in regards to that regulation?
Well, basically, you would need, from AML side, you would need a money laundering officer. Besides the money laundering officer, you need somebody in the board who is responsible for the same topic, AML and sanctions. So there are two roles. Beyond the board member, there should be a board member driving the business, basically CEO, who's really driving the business, who, of course, is responsible of the company overall, but maybe CEO shouldn't functionally look at regulatory aspects from AML side, because these functions should be distinct. CEO should be the one driving the business, and the other board member should be the one saying, "Hey, this is the place where you maybe are taking too much risks." That's usually the connection that they have, these board members. And then somebody from technical side, somebody working as a chief technology officer, seeing, basically overseeing how company fulfills DORA requirements, other national requirements for basically safeguarding data, companies' information, and so on. So I would see these roles are as the ones that should be there in the place. But of course, given many companies scale and there are a lot of requirements, maybe beyond these roles, there should be much more employees once the company starts operating.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And the question is, can we say that some of the positions also can be like fractional, roles? Like I'm employing not full-time person, but he will be spending some specific hours a week. And is that okay, or we should think about full-time employment here?
Good question. It depends on, I guess, the operations of the company, how big it is, how complicated the service is. But I would say that overall, if these roles are in place, they should be full time. Otherwise, it wouldn't look good in the view of the regulator. Also, when it comes down actually to operations of the company, I understand that a lot of things can be automized. At the same time, when it comes down and you start actually operating, there's still like a lot of work when it comes down to operating the company. So I wouldn't say that these roles can be fractional in any kind of way. Yeah.
Okay, of course, it will be joke what I'm going to say right now, but is it possible to use the AI agents, for some specific roles, to replace the human?
Well, it's a good philosophical question for all of us generally. However, I think at this moment, seeing where AI currently is, I would say no. And the other thing, I think this is also a view in Germany. I don't know if it was BaFin's role or some other authority's role, which said that, like especially with the board, even if you have AI doesn't have any, like, in a normal sense, liability or sense of liability. In order to have the company functioning properly, there should always be somebody in the board who takes the responsibility, because we as humans, we can feel the pressure there, and that's why there should be somebody there, even if AI does a lot. But to answer more concretely your question, as I said, AI is not at the level where you can fully trust it. It's hallucinating. It doesn't properly still consider answers and so on. So I would say shortly no.
Okay, okay, cool. I agree with that, but I just wanted
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
to
yeah,
make
yeah.
this
Good
funny
question.
question. Of course, maybe some of the roles like AML, it can be done with AI agents in the future, but still, I think this market needs to do a lot of developments in that sense, to make it work perfectly.
Mhm.
And as you said, hallucinations, this is one of the major issues right now. And probably if you use AI, you've seen a lot also of the cases where you get the answer, you feel that it might be okay, but after some verification, you can see that it's not really true. So you
Mhm.
need to check again and again. And the funny story is, speaking about AI, if you get some kind of information or data from AI,
Mhm.
you can ask additional question to verify if that information is correct. And
Mhm.
sometimes it shows you the answer that is not correct.
Quickly on this, that I would say that it's still AI is very, the answers provided are very surface level. It's like if we would talk about like legal side of things, if the AI cannot draft a legal memo or write a document to court, it just can't yet. And I think that human touch will always be necessary, because let's take AML as an example. You can provide probably a lot of guidelines of AI how to evaluate the client, but usually when it comes down to like just automatic verification, there could be a lot of cases where it just doesn't work. Maybe AI sees a red flag, but that real red flag, if you really consider it like something formalistic, you shouldn't reject that client if you would be a human and really looking at the case. So yeah, it's a good question, philosophical. Nobody knows the answer, I guess.
Okay, speaking about this pre-licensing, what you was mentioning, in Latvia, this is something interesting and something new. I never heard that other jurisdictions are implementing this practice. And as far as I understand, it's free, it's efficient, you can get respond very quickly. How normally it takes, to go throughout this process to get the answer? Are you applicable actually
Mhm.
to do business in Latvia, and are you applicable for the licensing itself? So how normally it takes?
The pre-licensing stage is not something written in the law. It's a little bit more vague. However, the practice is that if you submit information to the Bank of Latvia, by latest answer within 1 month to your inquiry. But at the very start, if you approach the regulator, they're very quick to organize a call to go through the service and the business you intend to provide. So that's going to be quick. And once you agree that you're going to continue with the pre-licensing in Latvia, then you have a very short Excel table with the main questions about your business model, about the services you will provide, about like some other questions about AML and sanctions, about the responsible board member, MLRO, and so on. So these are like the main basic documents that are in the Excel sheet. And what's happening, you during the pre-licensing, together with the Bank of Latvia, they have these questions. You provide an answer. Then, depending on if it's clear or not clear, they ask additional questions until everything is basically green from their side, that everything is covered. But I would say that this pre-licensing question, if you go further into it, it's already like a licensing process, because once you have the first call and you agree on few things, you can already get a sense from the regulator's side if this is acceptable. And then actually, from my own practice, I've seen that really the pre-licensing is already licensing, because they go into depth. It's not just like formal questions. Like, we drafted the AML methodology and risk assessment, and they had went through the documents and by asking questions and writing comments. So it's sort of the pre-licensing at the end goes already into licensing. But typically, I would say that once you start, you can end the pre-licensing like within 3 months. But that's already a considerable work. You have already decided on many topics: who's gonna be the board member, who's gonna be MLRO, your like the main things on services, on your business model, on prudential safeguards, on AML, DORA. Like, already you have gone with regulator through very important topics. And then after, like, I would say 3 months, you have already agreed on most things. Then you finalize the document package and you submit the final document package as part of the licensing.
Okay, but as a basis, just to start with, is it sufficient enough to have very well written business plan? Or I need also to have all the policies, procedures in place written, or just only business plan enough?
Yeah. If you are just approaching the Bank of Latvia, it's completely okay if you just explain the business model, the services you will provide, so that they understand what kind of service it's going to be according to MiCA at the end of the day. And just some general information from where you are, who are the main contact persons, and that's it. That would be enough and sufficient for you to start communicating with the Bank of Latvia.
Okay. It happens a lot when companies are going to some specific jurisdictions for the licensing. I'm not mentioning only Latvia, it's also Lithuania, Estonia, whatever. Everybody understand that those people not necessarily going to focus a lot into that specific jurisdiction, but the goal and target is like European market. And I'm pretty sure that, even regulators, everybody who is in this ecosystem, we understand that those people, we are writing that the initial focus will be in Latvia, for example, but sooner or later we would like to do the EAA passporting and then move to somewhere else. So how the Latvian regulator would look to the business who comes from Lithuania with a strong focus to European market, and Latvia, for example, is not the main key market. So is it possible to get the license for such a company, or you should think as a business that your target, location would need to be like Latvia?
It's not necessary that your target audience is in the same country. That would be my view. It's understandable that if you come to the regulator, you are seeking a MiCA license. It's gonna enable you to provide your business within Europe. I think that's very clear for regulators, at least. The only where I would extend my answer is that if you, for example, come from another country to Latvia for the license, you cannot think in a way where you think that, okay, I'm going to get the license, but I'm going to go work from elsewhere. It's necessary that you're actually on place, your team is on place in Latvia, that in case the regulator needs to approach you, they can do it quickly, basically on the same day. You cannot take this formalistic approach where, okay, I get the license, I'm actually elsewhere. You have to be in Latvia. So I would say that this is an important thing. Where the clients are, your main target clients are, that's a different thing. That could be elsewhere, but within Europe, basically.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this clarification. I think it's important to know.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked, because there are many companies who actually faking so much, this description and business plan that we're going to do the massive business in, that specific jurisdiction. But in most of the cases, it's not true. I know that regulators also are not stupid. We understand that.
Yeah.
This is basically, the companies basically comes to specific jurisdictions because it's easier, it's faster to get the license. So let's say if we are already in the pro-licensing process, we are starting a conversation with Central Bank of Latvia. Who is actually representing Central Bank of Latvia during the meetings or calls with the Central Bank? Is it like team of people who are working on your case and discussing with you, or we have some representatives How does it look like?
Mhm. Well, basically, there's a team, a licensing team working with CASPs, and then there are several persons that you can approach from the licensing team. You usually, at least in our experience, we usually talk with the head of the licensing team. But it's possible that you can approach somebody else from the licensing team if you're dwelling into a specific topic. Let's say if we're talking about AML or sanctions or the financial aspects, then you might need to talk with somebody else from the licensing team. But overall, if you organize like a online call, let's say, then everyone from the licensing team would be there just to go through all of the questions if you have them. If you're communicating through email, then everyone's going to be there as well, so that all of the team can see from client side, from the bank side, that what was the question discussed and so on. So it's very transparent, very clear from client's perspective when they're communicating with the regulator here in Latvia.
Kristers, it's also important, I think, to raise the question how the package looks like. If I want to apply, I need to consider some specific package of documents. So how it looks like? Can you just describe the structure of the documentation?
Mm-hmm. Like there's a big list of documents that have to be submitted during licensing process. But I would say, like my personal view is, at least how we work with our clients, is that a lot of documents are not strictly like if we provide legal services, they're not per se legal. Like there's not maybe in some of the documents, it's necessary for some expert to take a look at them. But a lot of documents are planning documents where you have to carefully consider within your team as a CASP how the process will unfold. So I think when you're approaching the licensing and then all of the documents, you just have to consider initially that there's a list of documents. You have to realize who is the best one to write them, to consider them. Of course, the company at the end of the day has to take a decision of approving all of them. I would say that initially, yes, it's just important to know that there's a list and it can be completed during the licensing process. At the get-go, when you start your road to licensing, you just have to be very sure and very clear on, as I said before, on the services you provide, what's your business plan, and so on. From there, you can go forward and create all of the documents necessary for the licensing. So yeah, just consider that there's a list. It can be done, and you have to just decide who will be the best expert for each document.
I really would like, maybe based on your experience, to raise the question. What are the major issues why, for example, companies are not getting the license, and what kind of reasons it might be?
Mm-hmm. A good question. I think that one of the reasons usually is that there might be some, and I don't want to paint a gloomy or a dark picture here, but it seems that there are some companies, some people who think that the licensing process is something very formal and that they have to submit few documents and everything will be fine. It's not the case. You have to go in substance. You have to realize for each document, like you have to consider risks of the business. As I said, there are many people who I think don't consider this at all. They think that this can be that the license can essentially be quickly bought. It's not the case. That's the one of the hurdles where people sort of not fail, but they back down and decide not to do it. But again, I don't want to paint the dark picture because it's doable and it's doable quite efficiently. You just have to have, I think, the right mindset to realizing that it's a little bit more work than just, sitting down for a few evenings and writing a few documents. It's a little bit more than that. Other than that, I would say during licensing, I wouldn't say that there are huge problems where people have hurdles and why they back down. Maybe the financing question is important, but I think it comes down to not only CASPs, but other financial institutions that want to provide their service. If you want to provide financial services within European Union, there should be some capital. It's not something that you can start with few thousand. It's not opening a local shop. But basically, if you receive a license, you get the option to provide the financial services within Europe essentially. So it's a serious thing at the end of the day. So I would say two main things that where people get hold back up is one is the mindset. If they don't have the right mindset, then the other one is maybe they have the right mindset, but they don't have the necessary financing to go through. Not only about licensing, this is more broadly about the operational start of the company. You need capital to actually implement all of the things later once you get the license so that you can actually function.
Okay, gotcha. And let's say if I will get a license, right, when my also target audience is in Europe, in other jurisdictions, everybody say about, EA passporting, about those things. But I'm not sure if people understand how actually we can do this EA passporting, how the process looks like, what it takes to do this EA passporting.
Yeah, passporting, of course, is then it's a light way of approaching another regulator because you've already received the license. I think the hurdles usually with licensing is that countries still within the European Union might have slightly different approaches. Passporting and what are the requirements for the company coming to your jurisdiction? Historically, but this was like 8 years ago, I've seen some passporting coming to Latvia where I've like my eyes have been very wide open seeing the documents they're submitting to us because like Latvia at the time already was like at the forefront with AML and sanctions topics, and we're pushing it for the highest standard. And I will not call upon the country which sent the documents in the office. It was a professional big office who sent the documents, but I wouldn't say that they did a bad job. It's just that the approach that was in the other country was so different that it was just like eye-opening that it's a licensed entity there in another EU country. The differences between requirements, few of the requirements, could be so big that the other regulator might say, "Okay, hold up, that we have some questions before you enter our market," and so on. So I think that's usually the biggest hurdle that could be in place there with the passporting.
Kristers, also, I'm curious to understand what other advantages or let's say benefits CASPs coming to Latvia can get later on. After all, I mean, it's not just only licensing, but I'm pretty sure that there are some other advantages what you could actually highlight.
Yeah. Well, there are a few. One of the things that is usually highlighted by our crypto association and other stakeholders is that there's 0% corporate tax if you reinvest the profit in the business itself. So that is an attractive thing within the European Union. I think for all of the Baltics, our tax regimes are quite competitive within the world. That's one of the things. Second thing is really maybe the approach and efficiency of other authorities as well, because we're working with the German client and they sometimes have a joke about themselves, how technologically in advance sometimes Germans still are using faxes and so on. And the thing, for example, that they like is that in Latvia, another advantage is that we are, I would say, we have our own problems, but I would say that we're technologically savvy and efficient in that way because, like, if we have electronic signatures, you can submit documents instantaneously from any EU member state to any authority. It will be accepted. You will receive a decision electronically. So those small things are very valuable. Then if we go even more broadly, another thing that the clients say that, there's a connection, fly to like, for example, Germany or France instantaneously. We can go to Riga. All of these small things, the tax regime, the efficiency of other authorities, the approach, accessibility, those are all of the things that are important. And also the professionals, because of the money wall situation, the audit that was over Latvia, we created a lot of professionals in AML and sanctions sphere. And so businesses from Europe can find AML and sanctions officers and other specialists in DORA and so on. So taking all of this together, I would say, creates maybe a very positive picture, I would say, for some businesses to come to Latvia.
Thank you very much for sharing those details about Latvia. I used to be in Unblock event, and we met there also together. And you was there, and I seen that the people were speaking about this friendly environment in Latvia, and that was like actually made me interesting. And I'm speaking with my clients also, and I'm suggesting them also to consider Latvian jurisdiction because I like two things. It's efficient. You have really attractive pre-licensing process, and at the same time, everything what is around taxes. It's also very useful to know. Many years ago, Kristers, in Lithuania at least, we were considered as a European fintech hub because our government, our institutions were invested a lot of time and effort to build this environment where the people who wants to get EMI licenses, we can come and get. And I think we were like a top jurisdiction for many years. And it looks like that at least I have a feeling that Latvia currently is targeting to be as a hub for crypto. So the first question is it true in your view? And another question is, maybe you know what is the overall strategy of Latvia for, let's say, 2026 or 2027?
Okay, to answer the first question, it's not a secret. Latvia is trying to rebuild itself as a fintech hub in a different light historically, but when the money wall and other gray audits started over Latvia over problems in financial sector. Previously, Latvia was also aiming to be like a little Switzerland here in the Baltics, where you can deposit your money and do transactions. But yes, then we had problems because of AML and sanctions topics. But now that we've done our homework and on a very good level, I would say that its aim is to again to be a fintech hub but in a different light, as I said, because we've done our homework regarding AML and sanctions and safety of the financial market. So I would say that in this light, Latvia is really trying to do it to attract more businesses coming to Latvia. And about the plan of the regulators, the state itself, I wouldn't be able to recall specific numbers, but I think the increase was planned of 30% of fintechs to be here in Latvia, 30% more than before, like fintech companies and so on. The aims are very high. So I would say that, yeah, Latvia is really pushing hard for attract more businesses and to showcase that we have, of course, scrutiny but in a good light. It's a trusted place where you can start your business in a positive way, basically.
Okay. So thank you for this clarification. I think it's going to be very useful for the community to know, because I know for sure that there are some people who are watching my videos. I know them even personally. So for them, this topic is really important, and some of the guys are considering, this to get the CASP licensing. So this educational episode will be very, very, beneficial to them. So yeah, Kristers, I really like to thank you, for your valuable time, what you spent with me. And I think that it's going to be very beneficial. At least to me, it was interesting to hear what you are saying about Latvia, about the jurisdiction, about the strategy, about the process itself, how it looks like and so on. So I really appreciate that you spend your time with me. I really wish you good luck with all the CASP licensing companies, who wants to get the license. And I'm pretty sure that you're going to help them a lot.
Thank you.